Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Smash JT, and yes, I'm in my car waiting to pick up my kid at school, but hey, doesn't matter. Okay, so GameStop going out of business. If you didn't hear about that, you're probably living under a rock. The video today is to talk about the retro game market and how GameStop going out of business is going to directly affect that. A lot of game collectors out there are buying NES carts, Super Nintendo carts, N64, Genesis, you name it, retro games, Dreamcast, Saturn. They're buying them all. They think they're going to be worth something in the future. They think that their collection is something that's going to be able to be retired on. And I'm here to tell you that that is not what's going to happen. That's actually the complete opposite. And you are throwing your money away, very similar to when we were younger buying baseball cards, thinking that they'd be worth so much money. They're not. That's not what retro games are going to do. It's not what baseball cards do. It's not what anything people collect does. Yes, there are a few exceptions like a Babe Ruth rookie card or Little Samson on the NES, but outside of minor exceptions, the retro game market is going to crash big time. I've been saying this for a long time, and GameStop going out of business soon is actually what prompted me to make this video. When GameStop closes up doors, shuts down everything, they have a gigantic stockpile of retro video games in a warehouse. I'm going to overlay some images here to let you know what I'm talking about. These are some of the things I was looking at previously, where these pictures are their warehouse, where they refurbish their games. And they have hundreds of thousands of retro games at these warehouses. And what's going to happen to these games when GameStop goes out of business? They're going to be given away to private parties who buy them up. And then those private parties are going to sell them at gigantic discounts compared to what GameStop was selling them for in the first place. And if you go to GameStop's website right now and you see what they're selling them for, they're not really selling for very much. People aren't buying games because they don't really need to anymore. There are too many other ways to play them. I think my kid's ready. I'll be right back. Where was I? So yeah, GameStop's website is not selling the games for the prices that they used to be getting for them. And that's due to a number of factors. Number one, the retro game market is kind of dying off because there are numerous ways to be able to play these games better on modern TVs than what these games offer. It's really hard to find CRTVs in houses, a lot of houses, unless you're a hardcore collector, retro gamer. Most people don't have a old school TV to play these games on where the hookup actually makes sense. So the modern televisions using HDMI, you're going to get the NES Classic, the Super Nintendo Classic. You're going to play these games on the PS3, buying them from the PlayStation Store. The retro Microsoft games on the Xbox Store. The games are available in a ton of different places, is my point. And people who were buying the retro games were doing it because they wanted to relive their childhood, and they saw a value in the retro games at the time. They kept increasing in value, but they are not going to continue to keep doing that. So if you have a lot of retro games and you find yourself not really playing them, if they're just shelf candy and you're not enjoying them anymore, I would strongly suggest selling them before they completely drop in value. But if you enjoy them like I do, just having them around the house, feel good memories, making me feel all warm and cuddly inside, which I openly admit they do, then keep them. But just know that the games themselves are only worth what people are going to buy them for. And as time goes on, more and more of these games are becoming junk. The only games that are going to be worth anything are the ones that are already expensive right now anyways. Games like Little Samson or Flintstones, Dinosaur Peak, and a few other handful of games on the NES, things like that. Outside of those games, though, they're not going to continue to increase in value. So don't keep buying retro games thinking that it's going to be your retirement. You are crazy if that's what you're doing. This whole retro game market seemed to come up out of nowhere and completely blindside a lot of people. I'm starting to wonder if GameStop themselves was a corporation that approached the used retro video game market, similar to how the De Beers dynasty approached the diamond market when they were getting started in the 1800s, and how they bought up all the different places to get the diamonds from, all the different digging sites, what the fuck are they called? How they bought up all the different mines everywhere across the globe that they were found at that point. De Beers purchased pretty much all of them. In fact, they owned over 90% of the diamond mines across the planet that were known at the time in the 1800s. And by doing so, they were able to manipulate the price of the market so that people thought these diamonds were actually worth something far more than what they were worth because the stock was oversupply what the demand actually was. And that's kind of how the retro video game market has been lately, where people feel like there's only a limited supply of these retro games. So if you don't have them, oh my God, they're going to go up in value because there's only so many to go around and they're not getting made anymore. But people forget that they made millions of these, like tons and tons and tons of these retro games. And people started caring for them and saving them far before a lot of people were throwing them out because they were useless or trash or junk back in the day. The games started jumping in value. People saw that and started holding on to them. So there are far more retro video games out there than people realize. And people need to start thinking for themselves as far as buying retro games. Why are you buying these games? What is your point? What are you doing? Are you playing them? Are you buying these retro games to play them? Because personally, I admit, I'm buying the retro games because I think I want to play them, but I don't necessarily ever do end up playing them. So I needed to stop buying them. I'm playing a lot of the retro games via emulation. And yeah, it's not illegal to do that because I own them, but it's also not illegal because Nintendo themselves are making emulation machines to be able to play these games. Nintendo, Sega, I mean, tons of different companies, Atari even, they're all making it new again. So the actual retro games that people are buying, you're throwing your money away. It's going to be worthless in 2 to 3 years, if not sooner than then. I am shocked how high the market has gone, and it's going to come crashing down. So don't tell me you didn't see this coming, because this video is your warning. I'd be very interested to hear what you have to say about this. Let me know in the comments below. Do you think the retro game market is going to crash? And if so, how soon? And why? Because personally, I think it's because the rise of emulation, legal emulation, the actual emulation made by these first-party companies, Nintendo selling NES and Super Nintendo classics with their official controllers, there's no reason to play it on the old hardware if you're actually playing it from something Nintendo made in the first place. Not to mention Nintendo's online service, where they're going to be adding Super Nintendo games very soon, I'm sure, and other platforms as well. It makes you start to wonder, why were you playing these games on the old systems in the first place? And people argue, oh, I want to play it on those controllers and things like that. Look, the controllers are making a comeback too. They already have an adapter for the GameCube controller on the Switch. You can play with the NES controller. I'm sure when the Super Nintendo games come out, they'll give you the Super Nintendo controller as an option to purchase as well. N64, you know, I already made a video on that as well. So the controllers, if that's your reason for playing these retro games on their original systems, on the original hardware, that's not a good excuse. Because, trust me, these companies know how to make money on these retro games without losing it to the games that already exist. And honestly, how many times have you played an NES game and it glitched out on you like a half an hour into it and you had to stop it? Like, that is the most annoying feature of an NES right now. If I start playing Rygar and I'm an hour and a half into it and it starts to glitch out, you can't save that game. You can't do anything. It's over. You're done. And that alone, that fact alone makes me not want to play these retro games on their original systems. And as time goes on and more modern conveniences come out for these retro games to be played on, there's going to be more people realizing that the retro games themselves, they're not really worth it. At least I'd like to think that's what people start thinking. Nostalgia is one hell of a powerful drug, and these game companies know it. That's why they're creating all these old school experiences and making them new again. And actually, in a way, making the old hardware completely useless. There's no reason to be playing old school games on their original hardware anymore. Now that these companies are finding out that there's a market for retro games, I don't really see a reason why people should be buying the old school games in the first place. I think it's silly. I mean, it's a matter of choice, and I think it's silly. And this is coming from someone who has bought a lot of them. Anyways, I'm going to leave it at that, but I'd be very interested to hear what you guys have to say about the situation in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, you stay smashing. Drina, can you say you stay smashing?
What time is that?